What if one day you needed help, but no one was there to answer? It's a thought most people push aside until the moment they find themselves alone in a crisis. Right now, millions of older adults live by themselves. Some enjoy the peace and freedom that come with independence. But for many, living alone comes with hidden risks. Unexpected falls, medical emergencies, security threats, and even the quiet, creeping danger of loneliness. It's a reality no one talks about enough. Did you know that 27% of seniors in the U.S. live alone? And that number keeps growing. For some, everything is fine until suddenly it's not. One fall, one scam, one moment of unexpected illness can change everything. So, how can you or someone you love stay safe without giving up your independence? There's good news. You don't have to live in fear. With just 5 simple steps, you can protect yourself and stay secure while living alone. And in the next few minutes, you'll learn exactly how. Because the right preparation today could mean the difference between safety and crisis tomorrow. But first, let's meet Walter, a 76-year-old who, just like many seniors, faced these same worries until he took action. Walter had always been an independent man. At 76, he still took pride in handling things on his own. Every morning, he brewed his coffee, read the newspaper, and took a slow walk around his backyard, admiring the garden his wife once loved. It had been 5 years since she passed, and though the house felt quieter, Walter assured himself that he was managing just fine. He cooked his own meals, fixed minor repairs around the house, and even drove to the store when he needed groceries. But lately, a nagging thought had started creeping into his mind, one he tried to push away. What if something happened to him and no one knew? What if he slipped while getting out of the shower? What if he had a medical emergency in the middle of the night? The idea felt unsettling, but he brushed it off. After all, he had been living alone for years, and nothing bad had ever happened. But then one evening, something shifted. Walter had been feeling a little off all day, just a slight dizziness. Nothing too serious. He assumed he was just dehydrated. As he reached for a glass of water, a sudden wave of lightheadedness hit him harder than before. His vision blurred for a moment, and he had to steady himself against the counter. A part of him knew this wasn't normal, but he didn't want to overreact. He told himself it was just fatigue. Later that night, as he lay in bed, he couldn't shake the thought. What if he had passed out earlier? What if he hadn't been able to get up? The realization hit him. There was no one who would check on him if something went wrong. He had no daily visitors, no one expecting a call from him. If he had collapsed, how long would it have taken before someone noticed? A day? 2 days? More? The thought left a lump in his throat. He had always seen himself as strong, capable, self-sufficient. But now, the silence of his home suddenly felt heavier than before. That night, Walter made a decision. He wasn't going to wait for an emergency to make him realize he needed a safety plan. He wanted to be prepared before something happened. The next morning, he made the first simple change, one that gave him a sense of security he hadn't realized he was missing. The next morning, Walter sat at his kitchen table, stirring his coffee absent-mindedly. The thought from last night hadn't left him. He had spent years assuring himself that he was fine, that he didn't need to rely on anyone. But now, for the first time, he admitted to himself that being completely alone wasn't just about enjoying peace and quiet. It was also a risk. He wasn't ready to give up his independence, but he needed a plan. Something simple. Something that wouldn't feel like a burden, but would still ensure that if something happened, someone would know. That's when he thought of Joe, his neighbor from 2 houses down. Joe was younger, in his early 60s, and they often exchanged small talk whenever they saw each other outside. Walter had never asked anyone for help before, but this wasn't about asking for favors. It was about having a system in place. That afternoon, when Walter saw Joe watering his plants, he walked over and brought it up casually. "Hey, Joe, do you check your phone every morning?" Walter asked, trying to keep it light. Joe looked at him, slightly confused. "Yeah, pretty much." "Why?" Walter hesitated for a second, then shrugged. "I was thinking, what if I just send you a quick text every morning? Just a good morning or all good here kind of thing. And if you don't hear from me by a certain time, maybe just check in?" Joe's face softened, and he nodded immediately. Of course, Walter. That's a great idea. And just like that, Walter had put his first safety measure in place. It was so simple. No major changes, no loss of independence. Just a quick daily message, one that gave him peace of mind, knowing that if something ever went wrong, Joe would check on him. A daily check-in system is one of the easiest, yet most effective ways to stay safe while living alone. A simple text message, a phone call, or even a wave from the porch can make all the difference. It's not about relying on others. It's about creating a small, consistent habit that ensures someone is always aware of your well-being. For those who don't have a nearby neighbor like Joe, there are other options. Some seniors use automated check-in apps that send alerts if they don't respond by a certain time. Others set up phone calls with family members at a set hour each day. And for those who prefer technology-free solutions, even a visual signal, like keeping the blinds open in the morning, can serve as a way for neighbors to know everything is okay. The best part is that a check-in system doesn't just provide security against medical emergencies. It can also prevent scams and security threats. Walter and Joe soon develop a habit. Whenever Walter received a suspicious phone call, he'd run it by Joe first. If someone knocked on his door claiming to be from a utility company, he'd call Joe before letting them in. Having a second opinion saved Walter from making mistakes that could have cost him dearly. A check-in system is one of those things that seems small until the day it saved a life. It's simple, takes almost no effort, and makes a world of difference. Walter never thought much about it before, but now, every morning when he sends his quick text, he feels a sense of relief. It's a reminder that even though he lives alone, he's not truly alone. And that one small change can mean the difference between being found in time or not at all. Walter had always considered himself careful. He never left his doors unlocked, and he never answered calls from unknown numbers. But one afternoon, as he was sorting through his mail, the phone rang. The voice on the other end sounded serious, professional. "Mr. Peterson, this is your bank calling. We've detected unusual activity on your account, and we need to verify your information immediately." Walter's heart skipped a beat. His bank? Fraudulent activity? He tightened his grip on the phone. He had never been in a situation like this before. The caller sounded so convincing, urgent, yet calm. It felt real. "Can you confirm your account number for security purposes?" The voice continued. Walter hesitated. Something about it felt off. He had heard about scams like these on the news before, but in that moment, under pressure, it was easy to doubt himself. His first instinct was to comply. But then he remembered something. Joe. "Hang on," Walter said, his voice steadying. "Let me check something and call you back." Before the caller could say anything else, Walter hung up. His hands were still slightly shaky as he dialed Joe's number. Within seconds, Joe confirmed what Walter already suspected. It was a scam. The so-called bank wasn't calling to protect his money. They were trying to steal it. Scams like this happen every single day, and seniors are one of the biggest targets. Scammers prey on trust, using fear and urgency to trick people into handing over their money, personal details, or even access to their homes. Some disguise themselves as bank representatives. Others pretend to be the IRS, a charity, or even a grandchild in trouble. They make it sound urgent, making it difficult to think rationally in the moment. And it's not just phone scams. Home security is just as critical. Burglars often see seniors as easy targets, especially those who live alone. A dark house, an open window, or an old lock can be an invitation for trouble. Walter knew he needed to do more than just be cautious. He needed real protection. The next week, he made a few simple but powerful changes. First, he upgraded his front door lock to a reinforced deadbolt, one that wouldn't be easy to break. He also installed motion sensor lights outside his home. Now, if anyone walked up his driveway or near his front door at night, they'd be instantly lit up. It was a small change, but one that made a big difference. Then he added something else, a video doorbell. Walter wasn't a fan of technology, but this device was easy to use. Now, whenever someone knocked, he could see exactly who it was before opening the door. He no longer had to guess. If it was someone claiming to be from a utility company, He could confirm their identity before even unlocking the door. And there was one more trick, something simple but surprisingly effective. Walter placed a fake security system sign in his yard. Even though he didn't have a full alarm system, the sign alone was often enough to deter criminals. For anyone living alone, these small security upgrades can make all the difference. Stronger locks, better lighting, and a way to see who's at the door before opening it. These are all simple steps that instantly reduce the risk of break-ins. But security isn't just about preventing burglars. It's also about avoiding scams. Walter made a rule: never give personal information over the phone unless he initiated the call himself. If he ever got a suspicious email or letter, he double-checked with Joe before responding. The sad truth is that scams are always evolving and criminals are getting smarter. But with little awareness and the right precautions, seniors can stay one step ahead. Walter no longer worried about falling for a scam or opening his door to the wrong person. He knew he was protected, and that gave him peace of mind. For anyone living alone, security isn't just a luxury. It's a necessity. And just like Walter, anyone can take these simple, affordable steps to keep their home and personal information safe. Because staying independent shouldn't mean staying vulnerable. Walter had always been a careful man, but no one expected an emergency until it happens. One morning, as he was making his usual cup of coffee, a strange feeling came over him. A sudden wave of dizziness made him grip the edge of the counter. He closed his eyes, hoping it would pass. But it didn't. His legs felt weak, and before he could reach for his phone, everything blurred. The next thing he knew, he was on the kitchen floor. His heart pounded in his chest. His phone was just a few feet away, but his body wasn't responding the way it should. Panic set in. How long would it take before someone noticed he needed help? Hours? A whole day? Emergencies happen fast. And when you live alone, the biggest danger isn't just the emergency itself. It's the time it takes before someone finds out. A stroke, heart attack, or a simple fall can turn deadly if help doesn't arrive quickly. That's why having an emergency plan isn't just important. It's life-saving. Walter knew he never wanted to feel that helpless again. So, after that terrifying moment, he put a system in place. First, he created an emergency contacts list and kept it in 3 places. Next, his landline phone, on his refrigerator and inside his wallet. That way, if something ever happened, emergency responders or neighbors could immediately see who to call. He also added IC, in case of emergency, contacts on his cell phone, so paramedics could access his medical history even if his phone was locked. Then, he took another step, one that made the biggest difference. He got a medical alert device. It was a small pendant, something he could wear around his neck or wrist. At first, he wasn't sure if he really needed it. But when he learned that these devices could detect a fall and automatically call for help, he knew it was worth it. No need to fumble for a phone or try to dial a number. Just one press of a button, and emergency services or a designated contact will be notified. Phones are useful, but only if you can reach them. Walter made a habit to always keep his phone within arm's reach, especially in high-risk areas like the bathroom and kitchen. He also programmed voice-activated dialing, so even if he couldn't physically pick up the phone, he could still call for help. Emergency readiness isn't just about medical situations. Fires, gas leaks, and even break-ins can happen when you least expect them. Walter made sure he had a flashlight by his bed in case of power outages, and a spare key in a lockbox so emergency responders could access his home if needed. He also thought through escape routes. If a fire started in his kitchen, what was the fastest way out? If someone suspicious knocked on his door, what was his plan? These small preparations might seem unnecessary, until the day they become the difference between life and death. Walter never wanted to feel powerless again, and with these steps in place, he didn't have to. He had peace of mind, knowing that if an emergency struck, he was ready. For anyone living alone, being prepared isn't about paranoia. It's about independence. A simple plan can mean the difference between waiting helplessly or getting the help you need in time. Walter had always considered himself steady on his feet. He had been active his whole life, climbing ladders, fixing things around the house, even tending to a small garden. But one ordinary evening, something happened that shook him more than he expected. He had just finished washing the dishes when he stepped away from the sink. His foot caught the edge of a small rug, and before he could react, his body lurched forward. The next thing he knew, he was on the floor, pain shooting up his arm where he had tried to break his fall. His heart pounded as he lay there, stunned. His first thought wasn't about the pain. It was about the realization that if this had been worse, no one would have known. Falls are one of the biggest dangers for older adults. In fact, every year, millions of seniors end up in the emergency room due to falls at home. A broken hip, a head injury. These can lead to long hospital stays, reduced mobility, and even permanent loss of independence. Walter never thought much about it before, but after that night, he realized just how easy it was for one small misstep to change everything. He decided to take action. The first thing he did was fall-proof his home. That rug that tripped him? Gone. He replaced it with non-slip mat that wouldn't move out of place. He went through every room, making sure there were no loose cords, no clutter in walking areas, and no objects that could cause an accident. Then he made a change in his bathroom, the most dangerous place for falls. He installed sturdy grab bars next to the toilet and inside the shower, making it easier to steady himself. He replaced his bath mat with a non-slip version and started keeping a small, lightweight chair in the shower in case he ever felt unsteady. But fall prevention isn't just about making a home safer. It's also about staying physically strong. Walter realized that over the years, his legs weren't as strong as they used to be. He wasn't as steady, and that made him more vulnerable to falling. So he started simple daily exercises to improve his balance and strength. Every morning, before his coffee, he did a few easy moves. Chair stands, where he sat in a chair and stood up without using his hands, helped strengthen his legs. Heel-to-toe walking, where he walked in a straight line, one foot in front of the other, improved his balance. He even did gentle ankle rolls to keep his joints flexible. It wasn't much, but over time, he felt the difference. For anyone living alone, preventing falls isn't just about avoiding injury. It's about maintaining independence for as long as possible. A simple home adjustment, a small change in routine. These things might not seem like much, but they could be the difference between staying safe and facing a serious accident. Walter learned his lesson the hard way, but now he feels more confident than ever. His home is safer, his body is stronger, and most importantly, he knows he's doing everything he can to stay independent for years to come. Walter had never minded being alone. He told himself he liked the quiet. After all, he had spent decades surrounded by people, his students, his co-workers, his wife. Now his days were slower, quieter. At first, he didn't think much of it. He read his newspaper in the morning, spent time in his garden, and watched TV in the evenings. But over time, something changed. The silence felt heavier. The days felt longer. Some mornings, he found himself struggling to get out of bed, not because he was sick, but because he just didn't have a reason to. Meals weren't as enjoyable when eaten alone. The house felt emptier than before. He told himself he was just getting older, but deep down, he knew what it was. Loneliness. What many people don't realize is that loneliness isn't just an emotional problem. It's a real health risk. Studies show that social isolation can be as harmful as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. It increases the risk of heart disease, dementia, and even early death. The human brain is wired for connection, and without it, both the mind and body suffer. Walter didn't recognize the signs at first, but he saw the difference the moment something changed. One afternoon, while running errands, he bumped into an old friend at the hardware store. They hadn't spoken in years, but after a few minutes of chatting, Walter felt something he hadn't felt in a long time, a sense of energy, of purpose. Before they parted, his friend invited him to a local woodworking club. Walter hesitated at first. It had been so long since he had been part of a group, and he worried he wouldn't fit in. But something inside him told him to go. And so, the next week, he did. Walking into that room, he felt a little out of place at first, but then something amazing happened. People welcomed him. They shared stories, laughed, and worked on projects together. And for the first time in a long time, Walter felt like he belonged. Staying socially connected doesn't have to mean being surrounded by people all the time. It just means having someone to talk to, someone who cares. Whether it's a friend, a family member, a neighbor, or even an online community, staying connected is one of the most important things a person can do for their health and well-being. There are so many ways to reconnect, no matter where you live or how long it's been. Joining a local club or hobby group is a great way to meet people with shared interests. Many communities offer senior fitness classes, book clubs, or volunteer opportunities that give people a sense of purpose. Even something as simple as a weekly phone call with family or an old friend can make a huge difference. For those who prefer to stay home, technology can help bridge the gap. Video calls, online discussion groups, and virtual meetups allow people to stay connected without even leaving their homes. The important thing isn't how someone connects. It's that they do. Walter quickly realized that staying social didn't just make his days feel fuller. It made him feel stronger, sharper, and happier. He no longer dreaded the long afternoons alone. He looked forward to his weekly meetups, to the conversations and laughter. And if he ever needed help, he knew he had people he could count on. Living alone doesn't have to mean being alone. The moment someone reaches out, they open the door to something powerful, connection, purpose, and a life that feels truly full. Walter had made 5 simple changes. Nothing drastic, nothing that took away his independence. And yet, those small adjustments completely transformed how he felt about living alone. He no longer worried about what if something happened, and no one knew. He didn't feel like an easy target for scams or break-ins. He wasn't afraid of emergencies catching him off guard. He had taken steps to fall-proof his home and stay physically strong, and most importantly, he no longer felt alone. At first, he resisted the idea of making changes. He had been independent for so long that he didn't want to feel like he was relying on anyone. But he soon realized that staying safe doesn't mean giving up freedom. It means protecting it. With a daily check-in system, smart security measures, an emergency plan, a safer home, and a way to stay socially active, he wasn't just safer. He was happier, more confident, and more in control of his life than ever before. For anyone living alone, these 5 steps aren't just recommendations. They're life-changing habits. Whether it's sending a quick check-in text each morning, installing a video doorbell, or making a small effort to stay socially connected, each step adds another layer of security and peace of mind. No one should wait until something bad happens to take action. A single fall, a single scam, or a single emergency can change everything. The good news? You have the power to protect yourself starting today. Which of these steps will you start using? Have you already made changes to stay safe while living alone? Share your thoughts in the comments. Your experience might help someone else watching. And if you found this helpful, don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more life-changing advice. Stay safe, stay strong, and remember, you are never truly alone.